Soviet Atomic Bomb Spy Syndicate, Part 1. Ruth, Werner, and Klaus Fuchs. The Soviet spy syndicate on the 1942 American atomic bomb project was exposed after Venona agents uncovered secret Soviet codes. Klaus Fuchs was arrested in 1950. He revealed other Soviet spy agents such as Harry Gold, Ruth Werner, David Greenglass, and the very controversial Rosenberg couple. The US and UK lost out on leaking information on their bomb projects because it could have saved Soviet researchers a year of work to develop the atomic bomb. Today we will talk about two agents in the syndicate, Ruth Werner, who passed information to the Soviets, and Klaus Fuchs, who played a key role. How did they work together to get and send information to the Soviet Union? Before we go any further, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Ruth Werner was a brave and persistent female spy. She worked as the main contact of Klaus Fuchs, a physicist who leaked the secrets of the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union. She was born Ursula Ruth Kuczynski, one of 6 children of Jewish couple Robert René and Berta Kuczynski. She grew up in a wealthy family in Berlin where her father was a well-known economist who worked in the local statistics office. Ruth Werner is her pen name. She joined the German Communist Party at the age of 19 after seeing disabled World War I veterans panhandling on the streets of Berlin. Fearing she would threaten business, she was fired from her job at a publishing house. She went to work as a writer for the party newspaper Rote Fahne, and she was trained as a bookseller. Not long after, she met an architect, Rolf Hamburger. They married and had one son, Michael. While she was working as a newspaper writer in Rote Fahne, the party informed her that she would be assigned to Shanghai. Although she lived quite well with her family, she still hoped for contacts from Shanghai. 4 months later, she became good friends with American leftist journalist Agnes Smedley. From Smedley, he was introduced to 35-year-old Richard Sorge. Sorge had been working as a Soviet Army intelligence agent in Shanghai for a year, carrying out a mission called Glavnoye Razvedivatelnoye Upravlenie, or GRU. In the 1920s, Werner flew to Shanghai with her husband. There it was Sorge who recruited Werner to become a spy agent. When Sorge asked her if she was ready to face danger, Werner nodded and provided a place for secret meetings with the Chinese communists. Werner joined the circles without her husband's knowledge. Later, Sorge gave her the name Sonia as her code name in 1933. 2 years later, Sorge went to Moscow and recommended Werner to the GRU. At the same time, her married life deteriorated. When she had to travel to Moscow for secret training, she left her son with her husband's family in Czechoslovakia. While in Moscow, she learned Russian, Morse code, and how to build radio transmitters and receivers. In 1943, she was sent to Manchuria, which was in a state of turmoil after being occupied by the Japanese. Working as a radio operator, her boss was a former sailor and also her mistress, Ernest. She was in charge of sending coded messages twice a week and buying and transporting chemicals for the purpose of making explosives for Chinese communist partisans. In 1935, they left China for fear that their cover would be blown. In 1943, she accepted an assignment to Poland despite being pregnant. Her daughter, Janina, was born in April 1936. While in Poland, she served as a radio operator. At the end of 1938, she was sent to Switzerland working as a radio operator while building a new spy network. She decided to separate from Ernest and go to the east. In February 1939, Werner met a British communist named Len Bearton. Werner wrote of her meeting with Bearton as love at first sight. She had a very good figure. Bearton was a veteran who had fought in Spain with an international brigade. He was her last husband. In 1940, the GRU allowed them to marry in order for Werner to gain British citizenship. Not only a radio operator, she has also worked as other agents such as a submarine radar specialist, a Royal Air Force officer to impersonate her brother and father. With her undercover skills, the head of GRU once said, "If we had 5 Sonia in England, the war would end sooner." In 1941, Werner was stationed in England to keep an eye on British military movements during the war on Moscow. She also began making secret transmissions from a radio set in her rental house near Oxford. She met Fuchs, who was working on secret atomic bomb projects at the time. They often cycled to the countryside in Banbury, Oxfordshire, to give Werner secret documents written in hieroglyphics. In 1943, she gave birth to a son named Peter Burton. She lived in England for the next 3 years before her identity was revealed in 1947 by British agents. She ended up working as a room renter and teaching German. Unlike Fuchs or Sorge, Werner was never arrested or prosecuted. In 1950, she returned to Berlin. She worked as a writer and wrote a short story in 1942 about a German communist who was gassed by the Nazis named Olga Benario. She published a novel in 1957 called An Unusual Girl, about her youth. Her 1976 autobiography, Sonia's Report, was a huge success in East Germany. The book has been translated into English and Chinese. She also published several children's books. In 1969, the GRU invited her to a ceremony to receive her second Red Banner, the highest Soviet military award. Since 1990, she was active in the Party of Democratic Socialism, or PDS, and worked as an advisor to the Council of Leading Figures. She died on July 7, 2000, which was announced by the PDS without the cause of death being explained. She left behind 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 3 sisters. Emil Klaus Fuchs, or Klaus Fuchs, is a physicist from Germany. He was born in Rüsselsheim, Germany on December 29, 1911. He studied physics and mathematics at the University of Leipzig in the 1930s. Then he joined the German Communist Party in the year. His father also worked as a professor of theology there. When his father moved and worked as a professor of religion at the University of Kiel, Fuchs also moved to the same university, taking the same major. In September 1933, he ran away to England to escape torture by the Nazis. In England, he worked as a research assistant to Neville Mott, a physics professor at the University of Bristol. He earned his doctorate in physics in 1937 from the University of Edinburgh. After graduation, he worked at the university with Max Born, a German physicist and mathematician. Fuchs had applied for British citizenship in 1939, but his application was not processed until the Second World War. As a result, in 1939, he was detained on the Isle of Man because he still held German citizen status. In July 1940, he was sent to a refugee camp for Germans as enemy citizens in Quebec, Canada. 1 year later, in January 1941, he was released by Professor Born and returned to Edinburgh. In May 1941, he and Rudolf Peierls compiled the Frisch-Peierls Report at the University of Birmingham. The report analyzed the manufacture of atomic bombs based on the theory of nuclear physics. After the report was published, he was invited to join a project called Tube Alloys, which was similar in scale to the Manhattan Project. Realizing the importance of the project, he contacted an exiled German communist, Jürgen Kuczynski, in late 1941. He offered the Soviets information on the Tube Alloys project. From then on, he was known as an agent under the code name REST. Fuchs leaked it because he believed that the Soviets also had a right to know about this important project. According to Dick White, Director General of MI5, Fuchs' motives were not money like other agents, but rather were, relatively speaking, pure. A scientist who got cross at the Anglo-American ploy of withholding vital information from an ally fighting a common enemy. Kuczynski connected him with another GRU agent, Ruth Werner, who lived in a rental house near Oxford. In 1942, Fuchs officially became a British citizen. Then, in August 1942, he signed the Official Secret Act, which is an agreement not to give state secrets relating to national security and defense to foreign governments. However, Fuchs continued to sympathize with the communists after signing the agreement. In August 1943, he went to Los Alamos, Mexico to work on the atomic bomb project in the theoretical division under Edward Teller and Hans Bethe. He invented the Fuchs-Nordheim method for calculating potential atomic energy release, focuses on Fat Man's implosion bomb. While working there, he gained in-depth knowledge of the design and theory of the bomb and sent it to the Soviets. In the same year, he was sent as a delegation of British scientists to Columbia University in New York to work on the Manhattan Project. He developed the gaseous diffusion method for multiplying uranium. While working on the Manhattan Project, he also worked with another GRU agent known as Raymond, an American citizen named Harry Gold who served as a courier for Soviet agents. They often met in several locations to hand over information, including in Santa Fe, Mexico, and in New York City. From the information sent by Fuchs to Gold, it was then transmitted by Werner to the Soviets, establishing the Soviet atomic project in 1942. The Soviets first exploded their atomic bomb in 1949. Since the Manhattan Project was undertaken in 1943, American and British agents have worked together to oversee the project called the Venona Project of the United States Army Signal Intelligence Service, SAS. They tried to break the Soviet secret code, Fuchs also attended the Trinity test, an atomic bomb detonation experiment held by the United States on July 16, 1945. In 1946, Fuchs returned to England to work at the UK Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, Oxfordshire, as head of the physics department. The place where he worked was dubbed the holiest of holies, as it was where many top-secret projects were carried out. Security was so tight, Fuchs himself was once investigated by MI5. However, they found nothing in his records. 4 years later, in 1949, Venona project agents broke the Soviet code and discovered an agent codenamed Rest. Rest was a key player who leaked various bomb projects for 3 years. Although initially unclear, investigating agents managed to narrow down the suspects to 2 people, Fuchs and another German scientist named Rudolf Peierls. It was not possible to use the material obtained from the Venona project considering the extreme secrecy of its operation. In July 1949, MI5 began looking for evidence on phone calls and letters received by Fuchs, but there was nothing suspicious. William Jim Scarden, a former police special branch officer, utilized Fuchs' father, who worked at the University of Leipzig. His closeness to Fuchs' father enabled him to arrange a series of meetings with Fuchs to discuss his personal life. Scarden eventually obtained stories that he could use as evidence to bring Fuchs to justice. When arrested, Fuchs denied it. However, he eventually confessed that he had been a Soviet spy since 1942 and revealed secrets about the atomic bomb project. He also helped identify other agents such as David Greenglass and the Rosenberg couple. However, he insisted on refusing to reveal details of his work as a spy. He was arrested in 1950, charged with violating the Official Secret Act and sentenced to 14 years in prison. Due to his good behavior while in prison, he was only held for 9 years. He was released on June 23, 1959, and returned to East Germany. He regained citizenship, then was appointed Deputy Director of the Central Institute for Nuclear Research at the Helmholtz-Zentrum Dresden-Rossendorf Laboratory. He was also a member of the East German Academy of Sciences and was awarded the highest honor in the German Democratic Republic in 1979, the Karl Marx Medal of Honor. In the same year, he decided to retire. Fuchs died at the age of 76 on January 28, 1988 in East Berlin. If you want us to cover other interesting topics, feel free to comment in the comments section below.